Today, teams across all major conferences use Dropback to play Moneyball. Moneyball, the #1 buzzword in college sports right now. What does that actually mean? See, Dropback defines Moneyball as the arbitrage between the market value and your value. And that's really what makes Dropback unique. Just like the pros, we have built software for general managers to define how they should value athletes. Our software takes into account your budget, your schemes, your priorities, and helps you deliver a valuation model to give you a defensible, data-driven process to valuing athletes. And why? Because this is exactly what the pros do. Agnostic of emotions, agnostic of market value. And the best part is Dropback exists to democratize the tools that pro teams use for college sports. Our software helps general managers act like a data scientist without having to learn or write a line of code. So I'm really excited to talk through why GMs across the country are using Dropback to define their cap structure, build their valuation models, and apply their valuation concept to any athlete across the country. Let's dive in. Dropback helps teams play Moneyball just like the pros for the new era of college sports. Clicking into my value model, right next to all of these prospective athletes and also my active athletes on the roster, I can see their valuation that is rooted in my budget and built on all these slot values and the models that I've built to come out with an intelligent, data-driven, defensible valuation for a given player. This information is all built through a multi-point model that is actually derived from many data points that you select. And so this particular example, it looks like we monitor performance as a factor in their value. We take into account a player's reps, their acceleration, their pass grade, their baseline offense. We also manually input their film grade, their analytics grade, their 40-yard dash time, and things from the scouting report. These are all data points that can not only be used for calculating the valuation for a player, but they also enable you to compare players head to head, both on my roster, as we can see this example player is on my roster, versus in the portal. These two with the dotted lines are actually players I've imported from the portal. Compare them head to head, and really this is where we play Moneyball. Find likewise players who are high on our valuation model, but low for market asking price to build the most competitive, cost-efficient team. So the real question is, how do we actually build this model? Well, the NFL and the NBA hire software engineers, data scientists, quant researchers, PhDs to build these models with coding languages like Python, R, etc. Instead, we at Dropback have built a drag and drop experience for GMs to become data scientists overnight without having to write a line of code. I'll show you how this works now. There's two big parts to our strategy module. The first is our positional value, and the second is the slot value model. The first, for positional value, this is a pretty canonical way that pros think about allocating their capital across their team. Based on our scheme, what percentage of our budget do we want to spend on offense versus defense? Within that, what percentage of our cap do we want to spend on the running back room? Within the running back room, how many guys do we want to have on contract? And this helps you develop some really basic math. 6% divided by 4 guys is equal to 1.5%. Now, where other software apps is giving you that basic number, 1.5% of your budget, simple math. But what the pros do is that they don't simply pay every running back 1.5% of their budget. They pay every running back unique to their value. Well, how do you calculate that value? That's where teams actually build models rooted in data to help accelerate or discount the slot value with real-time data analytics. So that's part 2, is we build our positional values, and then we go ahead and build our model that is rooted in real data to help manipulate those slot values created. So teams can build 2 types of models: an overall valuation model, a model that applies to every type of athlete, as well as models that apply to every position. So there might be, values such as practice availability that matter to everybody, but then of course there's only things like a PFF pass grade that might matter to a quarterback. That's the difference between these black cards and these white cards. Is black is overall, white is position specific. But these cards, what are they anyway? Well, they are like variables in a math equation, where you might have an equation that just has a few variables, or you might have many that are very variable intensive. These variables are really easy to add. All you have to do is push the plus new supporting metric, and new metrics are simply created. As you can see, these are really easy to drag and drop on the canvas. That helps you visually sort out all the different parameters within your model. And when you add a model, there's a few categories to consider. Let's make this model test. And when we make this model, you're going to decide what the weight of the metric should be. This is the percentage impact that this metric might have on the overall model. And so if we zoom in for test here, I might say just, for right now, it's a 10% weight. And then I have to decide if I want to make this metric manual or automated. Manual would be manual data entry. Maybe we have a tier system internally where we have like a red, green, and blue running back, and that matters to me in a certain way. I can simply create a custom group here. I can make it red, green, blue, and I would be able to chart a player on this plot to where they attest to.
I can have many different data types. You can have integers, percentages, time, yard, etc. These are all ways for you to build your manual scouting workflows into Dropback as a codified version of your recruiting workflows. Or option 2 for metrics is to not manually input data, but instead automatically grab data from many of our data providers. Dropback leads the industry in 10 plus third-party data integrations with providers such as Catapult, Huddle IQ, PFF, NextGen Stats, telemetry, and more. And these provide over 1,000 data points for teams to directly have real-time data pull from the entire athlete database across the country and include that data real-time in their models. So as an example, we're on quarterback and I might want to choose a data point from PFF, specifically their grade of their pass, so like their season pass grade. This is a model that goes from 0 to 100, and let's just say I want to set the target of 80. So this is saying that the ideal output for this number for my quarterback room should be an 80. And based on where this player performs, if they get an 85, they're going to perform above this metric, which is going to result in a higher valuation. If they get a 60, they're going to perform lower, and it's going to be a lower valuation, etc. Let's just say I don't know what 80 is or should be in the first place. Like, what is the ideal target that I should have? Well, that's kind of where our handy data summary comes into play, where I can say in the SEC for quarterbacks this past season, what should the target be? What is the actual distribution of all quarterbacks in the SEC for this pass grade? So we actually run some data science and regression in the background to figure out this information for you, where you can actually look at the data and decide, okay, it looks like the mean of the data point here is around a 69.5, but I might want to have like a high rigor here. I can set that my target here is 80, which is actually right above the upper quartile. So maybe I'm pretty happy with 80, or I can go ahead and fine tune that further. I can fine tune by drilling in, or I could add more filters. I could add a filter like only return players who, threw for 1,000 passing yards. What is their pass grade, etc. So this really helps you dial in your model with data. So this was an example. I'll go ahead and delete it, but we can see that we went through this process for dozens of different data points throughout quarterback. And obviously it's different for every position, where we have an aggregation of both manually entered data points and automated data points from our dozens of providers. We have teams take this in many different ways, because this truly is an infinite playground for you to create the data models that matter to you. You might create a model that's very heavy on performance. You might want to factor in academics or seniority or honors or social media followers. That's completely up to you. And not only can you create the infinite types of models, but you can also create an infinite number of models by having many different strategy versions that you can create. You can duplicate existing models, you can create new models, or coming soon, you can choose from an entire library of models built by experts across the NFL and college sports. Once your models are created, it's really time to play Moneyball. There's 2 core ways in Dropback to do this. The first is actually applying your models to your roster. And so again, you can apply any model at any time to any player on the roster page by selecting the model and seeing what their output is like. Like we talked about in the top of this demo, Tommy's output for my main value model is 387. This factors in my total budget, my percentage allocation to quarterbacks, the slot value, and the manipulation of that slot value based on the data output for the model that I created. But you can see here that Tommy's actually a transfer portal target, which I can actually add any number of portal targets from the entire population of athletes. Over 50,000 athletes across active, transfer portal, and high school are built directly in the Dropback for you to easily pin to your board and compare both players on your active roster to potential players in the portal and actively compare their values head to head. But the final exciting use case is actually applying your value model to the entire universe of athletes. So we can go in and actually say, pull me quarterbacks that are cheaper than $200,000 per my model. And what we do is we actually take your model, apply that model to every single athlete across active, transfer, and high school, and return players that might be diamonds in the rough. Again, high value athletes per your model that you can go out and get for either a sensible dollar amount that isn't just made up. It's a data-driven dollar amount that we can go out and recruit a player with confidence. Or potentially we can compare our value model output to the market value, i.e. if this model says this player is worth $200,000 and their agent or them are asking for $75,000, that $125,000 gap is the definition of Moneyball. Again, this is the tip of the iceberg for the innovative features within our data-driven spend intelligence platform built in the Dropback, the pro-grade software built for college sports. Stay tuned for the many new demos coming out later this week. Thanks.